Gene sequencing stocks have been a bright spot for investors in an otherwise uncertain year, as lower costs and an increased urgency for biotech solutions to the ongoing pandemic have created opportunities for long-term growth in the sector. And joining me today to discuss these trends is Simon Barnett. He's a genomics analyst with ARK Invest. The ARK Invest Genomics ETF focuses on investing in emerging and disruptive technologies in the healthcare sector. And Simon, that ARK Invest Genomics Fund has performed extremely well. It's up more than 100% on the year. Why has exposure to genomics yielded such good results?
So thanks for having me, Alexis. I think it's really two things. And the first one to point out is that genomics is one of those technologies that's on a really extraordinary cost decline. So becoming cheaper and faster, these are the types of things within the healthcare space that become emphasized during a time of crisis like this, where the adoption for many of these companies has been accelerated, years faster than what we might have had outside of the situation. And the second thing that I would really point to is the fact that a lot of the underlying technology that you point out within ARKG, things like next generation DNA sequencing and gene editing and computational biology, these are things that investors are now really beginning to understand how important and broadly applicable they are, within our response to the pandemic itself, but also broadly across areas like rare disease to oncology. A lot of those things are really starting to come online and be appreciated, I think, by a much larger audience because of this situation.
Right. And, we'll get to some of those areas in a minute, but as you see kind of these COVID therapies moving forward, we have these vaccines coming online. What do you see as the opportunity here for investors?
Yeah, so I would say I'll tackle that first with the vaccines. The interesting thing about a lot of the leading vaccine candidates, almost all of them are based on something called RNA, which falls within the wheelhouse of genomics. So this is the trial by fire for an entirely new breed of vaccine molecules, so RNA. So the fact that we've been able to potentially get them to market within, let's say, 18 months or so after the pandemic started is, 4 or 5 times faster than we've ever had a vaccine developed. So I think that speaks to the fact that the technology really is very quick and much more expedient than some older techniques. And then on the therapeutic side, it's interesting. This is really where we have a convergence of two different technologies. So we talked a little bit about things like gene editing. These allow us to kind of create or make changes within the genome, and especially for antibody therapies, understanding just the structure that goes into how they work and how that could be used to help abate some really serious symptoms. So I think for investors at this point, just learning more about the technology that enables it. So I think a really good example to point out here is a company called Twist Biosciences that does a lot within synthetic DNA. And that is the bread and butter for being able to kind of build out some of these antibody therapies. So I think there is still a lot of headroom to go with genomic technologies.
Another exciting area of growth for use of genomics is this long-read DNA sequencing to identify rare diseases. Names like Pacific Biosciences, which has also seen explosive growth over the last few months, has really stood out here. Can you talk a little bit about this type of sequencing and what growth opportunities you see in this field?
So just to level set on sequencing, just so people can kind of get an appreciation for where we've come. 2003 was the end of the Human Genome Project, right? So our first attempt at sequencing the entirety of the human genome to understand what it meant. That took about 10 years to complete and cost around $3 billion to accumulate that sequence. Nowadays, that same sequence can be generated for about $500 and assembled in just a few hours. So all of that innovation, all those cost declines and that acceleration all sits on the back of something called short read DNA sequencing. And so however way you want to cut it, essentially what happens is we take the genome and you fracture it into millions of small little puzzle pieces, and you have to use a computer to reassemble them. So short read, think of it as a ton of jigsaw pieces. Whereas long read, which is, you said Pacific Biosciences is the leader there. Think of it as just a smaller number of puzzle pieces and it's much easier on a computer to reassemble. And the benefit is that you can see all sorts of mutations that you just cannot see with short read technology. It doesn't matter what algorithm you throw at it, it's just invisible in many cases. And the importance of this is actually really far reaching. We actually just saw PacBio partner with a company called Invitae that we own within our ARKG portfolio to help offer long read DNA sequencing for children that present with seizures, right? So to understand the genetic underpinnings of diseases like epilepsy, where even whole genome sequencing with short read wouldn't be able to get to a genetic diagnosis, whereas long read you can. And I think the pediatric setting is probably the most exciting kind of real world and near term application for PacBio technology. And not just within rare disease or neurology, but things like pediatric cancers, which we know are really heavily driven by mutation types that are only visible to PacBio technology. So we think there's still a ton of room to grow, not just for the technology, but also for the company.
Well, Simon, thank you so much for your insights today.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And for more of our coverage on the biotech and genomics sector, head on over to investors.com. For Investors Business Daily, I'm Alexis Garcia.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching Investors Business Daily on YouTube. If you want to watch more videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.